Hello students. In this video we are going to discuss about metals and its properties. You are quite familiar with the different examples of metals in our daily life like gold, which is used for making ornaments. And what about the silver metal? That is also quite familiar. It is also used for making different ornaments and for making jewelries. Copper is one of the quite familiar metal that is used for making electrical wiring. Iron is also one of the common type of metal which is used at home like in the construction work and for the different type of materials which is available at home that is made up of iron. So these are the certain common examples of metals that we are familiar. Let us discuss the properties of metals. First, metals have a lustre. That means metals are shiny. That we could able to observe the different type of metals, that is copper, silver, iron, gold. We could able to observe that all these are shiny in nature. That is called as lustrous nature of metals. Because of this, these metals are used for making jewelries. Example, gold, silver. These are the very common example of metal which we used to make jewelries. That is because of the lustrous nature, that is because of its shiny nature, we prefer these metals in making jewelries. Next property is that metals have silvery grey or golden yellow in color. That is, when we look at the different examples of metals, we could able to see that either they have a silvery grey color like the case of silver metal, and either they are of golden yellow color like the gold, or even you can see the copper. So we could able to say that metals have silvery grey or golden yellow color. That is usual. The next property is that metals are good conductor of heat. That is why the utensils which we use at home, that is usually made up of copper, aluminium, and even nowadays we use stainless steel for cooking food. Actually, these stainless steel is an alloy. It's not a metal, it is an alloy, but that is a mixture of different metals. So here what we could able to observe from this that because being good conductor of heat means it allows the heat to pass from one end to the other end. So such type of materials are allowing the heat to pass through it. So the very good example, copper utensils which we use at home, aluminium is quite familiar, but nowadays alloy, that is stainless steel, has taken very important role in the utensils. So that is actually alloy. Stainless steel is an alloy. It's not a metal, but it is a mixture of metal. So all these what it shows that because being good conductor of heat, these metals are used for cooking purpose. That we can say metal used for making utensils because it conduct heat quickly, thus reduce the cooking time. And aluminium is considered to be the best for cooking utensils, and that is very familiar to us. Next is metals are good conductor of electricity. That is why we use the metals like copper for making the electrical wires, because being very good conductor of electricity. Conductor of electricity means it allows the current to pass through it. That is, copper and aluminium are mostly used as the electrical conductors in the electrical cables. So you could able to observe the metals like copper, which is quite familiar in the metallic wires. Next is metals are ductile. What it means by ductile? Ductile nature means it can be drawn into wires. That means it can be made into the wire form. That is the nature of metal, which is called as ductile nature. That is, we could able to make the wires, that is because of this property of metal, which is called as ductile property. The next is metals are malleable, that it can be hammered into thin sheets. Malleable means that is when we beat and when we hammer a metal, instead of breaking down into pieces, it will be made into thin sheets. That we can do here, like if metal is taken and when we hammer it will be made into thin sheets. That is what the metallic foils are available, like aluminum foils we use at home. That is actually thin sheet of aluminum. And how we could able to get it? Because of the nature of the metal, that is malleability. Because of this only the metal can be converted into thin sheet. It can be hammered into thin sheet, and this property is called as malleability. The next is metals are sonorous. Now what do you mean by sonorous? That means it makes a ringing sound. Like this, just now we got the sound, a ringing sound. And how we got the ringing sound? That is by when hitting a particular metal, we get a ringing sound. That is why we use the metals for making the bells. This property allows it to be used for making bells. So because of this sonorous nature only, the bells are actually made up of metals, and that is familiar to you. You have seen the bells, and that bells are actually made up of metal. This is because its nature called as sonorous, because when it hit, it gives a ringing sound. That is called as sonorous nature of metal. Next is all the metals are solid at room temperature except mercury. You are very much familiar with the mercury, that is actually liquid in state at room temperature. Mercury is the only metal that is the liquid at room temperature, because just now we have seen the different examples of metals like gold, silver, copper, iron. All these are solid in the room temperature, but one of the exception is the metal called as mercury, because mercury is liquid in the state at room temperature, and it is used in the clinical thermometers. And you are very much familiar with the mercury, that is actually used in the clinical thermometers at the bulb end. We have mercury. Certain examples of metals just we can mention here. First example, gold. You are very much familiar with the gold. Its shiny appearance. The gold, which is yellowish golden in color. Next we have silver. That is actually lustrous in nature. That is silvery-grey color. Next we have copper. Copper, which is used for making wire, metallic wire. Next, iron is quite familiar, because we deals with the certain materials which is made up of iron, like iron nail. Next we have sodium. Sodium metal is not familiar to you, because this is not using at home in our day life, but it is used in the laboratory for the different experiments. So that is also metal, and it also has shiny appearance, but it is actually a soft metal that can be cut with the help of knife. Next we have potassium. Similarly, potassium is also seen in the laboratories. Next we have aluminium. That is also very familiar to us, because a lot of utensils at home are actually made up of aluminium, and even you are familiar with the aluminium foil. That is actually a thin sheet of aluminium metal that is also used in our day-to-day life. So these are the certain examples of metals. But there are further different examples are also available. Only the few which is very common only I mentioned here, and you could able to find out the different examples of metals and list it out here. So this is all about metals. Have a nice day.